Hello everyone, and welcome to the Training in My Life podcast, episode 108. This week, life's surprises. Now there may be big surprises, they may be small surprises, they may be interesting, but surprises always sort of add to our life a little bit extra. So what surprises did I have this week? Well, one surprise that was just plain interesting was the fact that I caught my train, just like usual, the first one I get on, and within a couple of stations it stopped. And the driver announced that somebody had jumped down on the track in front of his train, and now, don't get me wrong, they clearly weren't trying to commit suicide. They'd maybe dropped something on the track or something. And within perhaps 10 minutes, we were on our way again, but that's not all that happened. We were then sort of behind schedule and had to stop more at different stations, different sort of part way along the line where the tracks joined another track. And we were basically waiting for our turn to cross in front of other trains because we were running behind schedule. Anyway, we were stopped not far from Victoria Station. Just like I say, this time we were waiting for a platform to become available. And I looked out the window and I could see smoke coming off a wooden sleeper on the couple of tracks over. And I watched it and I thought, it's like the wood of the sleeper is smoking. And I thought, it's an incredibly hot day, so maybe it sort of started to smoke like that. It's been in the heat of the day. Anyway, then another train came along at the side of us and it crossed over the smoky little sleeper. And it was 10 to 12 carriages long, so it was a long time going over. And it wasn't till afterwards I realised that would have been like a rush of air concentrated across that smoky sleeper. And when the train had finished going across, there was a tiny little fire. There was flames. And these did actually sort of blow themselves out within a few minutes. But I thought, whenever I hear, there's fire on the tracks, you hear it announced sometimes because there's delays or cancellations and stuff when you're stood at a station. And I've always thought, people who are just looking for trouble have gone and started a fire on the tracks to delay everybody. But no, these things can happen like spontaneously. And I was sort of, wow, it changed my whole view of how a fire starts on the tracks. And it was reported when we got to the station. But yeah, that was a surprise and something sort of interesting and added to my knowledge of the world. Now, completely opposite to that, today I've been in my room unpacking some boxes and repacking them into new boxes. And this is because some of them are looking a bit battered. The handholds on the boxes have broken and they're going to need to be repacked because eventually within the next sort of 6 months I'm moving again, and knowing that these boxes are in a state that they can't just be ready for removal men, I needed to get the job done and get it sorted out. Anyway, one of these boxes, they're all labelled with like a code number, and then it's written in a book and it tells you what's in it, which always helps when you're at the other end. But one of them was labelled lounge, and when I opened it, it was all kitchen stuff. So we'd mislabeled it when we moved. It was perhaps one of the last ones done in a hurry. And when I opened it up, I was pulling things out like a box of washing tablets, those pod things. And then there was bottles of stain remover, those spray bottles that you get, and the sheet that I put in to soften fabric, stuff like that. And I sorted it all out, and I bet there was £30 worth of kitchen stuff there that I now don't have to buy. I haven't run out of any of those things in my kitchen at the moment, but it means I won't have to buy them for months. And I was like over the moon. I thought, wow, look, it's like a gift. And because they were just sort of washing, laundry, cleaning stuff, when we arrived and unpacked essentials, it wasn't something that I particularly looked for. First shop at the supermarket, I picked up all those stuff that we needed anyway. But yeah, I was like, wow, that's fantastic. So that was a surprise that I was really happy about. As an anecdote, I will tell you, I put out my thrifting video where I'm trying on some clothes this week, and I have what I would term my ice cream belly. And this is because we've had a lot of hot weather, a lot of weeks of hot weather, and the problem with that is I was repeatedly filling the freezer drawer with ice creams. Like, you don't buy a box of ice cream, you buy 4 boxes of ice cream. And then sat in the evening, I'd want one when I came in, and then I'd want one after dinner, and and then the other day I got on the scales and thought, good grief, what happened there? That's more than Christmas. And it's like, so I have an ice cream belly, and now the ice cream drawer in the freezer of the empty of ice creams, trying to do other things like putting fruit in the fridge so that it's cold, so you can have cold fruit instead of cold ice cream. But I miss them. But yeah, for a little while I'm not going to indulge. Yeah, so back to life surprises. I think sometimes you'll run into somebody that you haven't seen for a while, and you just happen to be at the same place at the same time, walking through a shopping mall or getting on a train, and they're sat opposite you and stuff like that. And that's one of life's surprises. That is really nice and can alter your whole day. It can put a smile on your face. Yeah, so that's one of life's nice surprises. Oh yeah, I'd noticed at the house I'm living in, I'd noticed that a whole bunch of sparrows seem to hang out in a hedge at one side of the footpath that goes up to the house, and then found out that they're actually nesting in the roof of the house on that side of the house, which is why they're hanging out. That's a nice surprise. It's a nice surprise. I mean, they're only little sparrows. They don't make a lot of noise. The chirping is pleasant chirping. But the other day I opened the front door and went to step out and nearly trod on a sparrow, which is not something you say very often, and was a complete surprise. And I didn't realise they were also hanging out sort of in the porch. It's not a covered porch. It's covered, but it's open, to the outside world. And I thought, I'll have to be really, really careful that I open the door and look before I step out from now on. Basically, I went to step out, and then whoosh, there's this bird sort of flying off from where my feet were. So I was very glad that I didn't tread on a sparrow. I said, I don't know, that would be horrendous, wouldn't it, treading on a sparrow? Anyway, it's a nice surprise that they're nesting, and it's lovely to see them in the front garden. And I'll just be very careful that I don't. It must have been a surprise for the sparrow as well, somebody opening the door. But I will be very careful not to tread on a sparrow whenever I come out of the house. So another one of life's surprises. We all have those big surprises in our life as well. When somebody drops to one knee and proposes, or when someone tells you you're having a baby, things like that. Those are big surprises, and hopefully in all those situations you will be very happy about it. And I think when there are surprises that are somewhat negative, like you get back to your car and it's got a parking ticket on, or you thought you were going to get a job and you don't actually get it, then it's up to you how you handle that, because there are always going to be ups and downs, isn't it? You can look at it and say, at least I've got my health, at least I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I get to see tomorrow and have another day, and all is good in the world because I'm alive and ticking. And yes, it's a bit of a downer, but you'll survive, you'll get through it. Just look for the good things. Oh, by the way, has anybody noticed how many butterflies are around at the moment? I don't know whether it's the heat, and butterflies like heat, but there was a time when there was only white cabbage butterflies around, and suddenly in the past couple of weeks there's loads of these sort of red admirals. I don't know why they call that really, because they've got sort of orange and red and black and all kinds of colours on them. But you know what I mean? There are different butterflies around at the moment, and quite a lot of butterflies as well, I find. I mean, I'm sat looking out in the back garden at the moment, and the amount that have sort of fluttered their way around, there's another one. And they move so fast you don't get a really good chance to identify them, but you can tell whether they're the white ones or not, and they're not the white ones, they're different ones. So they're a nice surprise in the garden. Temperatures have been in the 30s, and I was leaving work on Friday, and there's like a readout near the station, a digital readout, and it said it was 42. And I immediately think, oh, the thing is broken. But then I was reading something about how it's not just the temperature of the weather, it's also the humidity makes it feel a lot more and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just of the opinion it's very, very hot. So, you know, I'm a girl for the shady side of the street and the big sun hat and trying to keep myself covered up so that I don't get sunburnt. I'm just thinking of another nice surprise. I have to admit, with my commuting in the past week, it's been fraught with problems. But this is the heat affecting the rails, because quite often all the trains have to run slower because of how hot the rails is. I think it's to do with the fact they can jump the rails and come off the rails because of how hot they are. They're more sort of bendy. So when you get frustrated with the fact that you're not going as fast, so you're not going to get your connection, at least you're safe. I mean, that's the main thing to think about it. But the surprising thing with that is I've had to catch different trains because ones have been cancelled, or slower trains, and I found myself sort of, you get to a point and you think, well, what's the point in worrying? You do. You think you get beyond the anxious stage to the really chilled out stage where you think, oh, I'll get there when I get there. And then you start looking around and noticing different people and noticing things out of the window. And in a way, that's a nice surprise. You'll see things and hear things that make you smile. And it's just different when things don't go to plan. And certainly with transport, you can't control that with what it does. And I'm grateful that I'm actually on trains, because, you know, buses frequently their air conditioning doesn't work. I would say 1 out of 3 trains I get, the air conditioning isn't working. And I just sit there and think, never mind, it's not a long journey. You'll get there soon. But then it makes you really appreciate when the aircon is working. So, you know, and then it's almost like a surprise every time I get on a train, because I get on a train, I sit down and I think, okay, is it going to come on as soon as they set off? And sometimes you can tell. Sometimes you can tell when you get on a train just how hot it or not it is. I have one train and I only go one stop, and it's always beautifully air conditioned. So that's never a surprise. I know that one will be. It's just unfortunate I don't go like 7 or 8 stops on that one, but never mind. So in your life, I hope you experience lots of surprises that are nice for you and that you enjoy. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend, and come back next time. Bye for now.